Good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to be here. I found it quite difficult actually to prepare for today because Louise Van Rijn actually asked me to do this because my company's name is Reflective Learning. And what I didn't want to actually do is stand here and give you a sales pitch for 45 minutes. So I thought that the best way for me to handle this topic, my favorite topic, would be to tell you a bit about the journey that I have been on to develop a solution to the problems we have in maths and science through reflective learning. So I'm going to start with the doom and gloom because it sets the tone nicely to see like where we can move from. Okay, so you're probably all familiar with this, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it was a couple of years ago, World Economic Forum, and we were sitting at the bottom of the list. And that's just a perception, remember, it's not an actual measured result. But unfortunately, when we get the kinds of maths and science results that we get on the ANAs and also on the grade 12 results, it reinforces that perception. And there's a big problem with maths and science in our schools. This data is also a couple of years old. I think it's 2014, but I was working in Mpumalanga at the time, and the national average on the grade 9 ANA for maths was 11%, with 3% of the learners nationally achieving above 50%. And my province was below that average, and so it was pretty desperate. Of course, we see the same thing with our grade 12 results. And what's of great concern is that the majority of learners do not have access to maths and science. That access is denied to them in their earliest years at school. We don't even have, well, I think we're just about getting to the point now where half the learners are taking maths to grade 12, but we've been below, I think you can see, my slide's not very clear, I'm sorry, but it's about 41%. 2 years ago of learners that write matric actually even do maths. And of those learners that do write matric, we don't even have half of them actually passing. And those that pass are scraping through with between 30 and 40%. So we all know the problem is there. The interesting thing is to look at why it's there, and that's where most of my work has been over the last 5 years, really. You might be familiar with the work of Nick Spall at Stellenbosch University, and he wrote an incredible paper in 2015 called Falling Behind and Staying Behind. And he looked at the results of primary school learners in maths, and he was able to see that if you look at in South Africa our schools are divided into the 5 quintiles, and when he looked at the achievements of learners in foundation phase in quintiles 1 to 4, he found that they were 3 years behind by the end of foundation phase. The quintile 5 independent schools, it was fine, but quintiles 1 to 4, they're 3 years behind at the end of grade 3. They've only been at school for 3 years. And then he looked at grade 7 performance as well, and he found that they're 4 years behind by the time they get to grade 7. So they catch up 3 of those years that they've already missed. And so we started at that point to be talking about learning deficits. And I just want to mention the terminology because if you talk internationally about learning deficits, it usually refers to children who have actual physical cognitive difficulties. In our case, They are children who are underperforming because of their circumstances and the system that they find themselves in. It has got nothing to do with any lack of potential or ability on their part. And so I've put an acquired in front of learning deficits because, you know, in biology, the term acquired refers to things you pick up along the way, and these learners have acquired learning deficits that set them back. And the reality is that they're not allowed to take maths and science in grade 9 because their marks are not good enough. Their access, that access was denied many years before that. So I want to highlight this as well because this is another little reality. This is like my favorite quote, really, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in schools. I work as a project researcher and a project evaluator and have been doing that for the past 12 to 15 years. I have teachers looking, they're almost in tears, saying, I can't understand why they can't do this. I've taught them this. Why can't they do it? And sometimes as teachers we forget that just because I taught it doesn't mean they learned it. And that's where the most important part of this comes in, and that is around assessment. Assessment bridges the gap between what we teach and what the learners learn. This is my guru, Professor Dylan William. He's from the UK, and he promotes embedded formative assessment. I don't want to bore you with a whole lot of terminology, but basically when I say assessment, it isn't usually interpreted the same way when other people say assessment, because many people think assessment is marks, reports, promotion. For me, assessment is feedback to direct my teaching, and that's formative assessment. The problem is teachers are under so much pressure to collect marks for reporting that formative assessment falls by the wayside just because of the time constraints. But formative assessment is a critical part of reflective learning, not only for for learners, but for teachers as well. So I just want to tell you about a little project that I was involved in that was life-changing, not just for the 50 learners that were involved in it, but for all of the people that worked in it as well, for me too. In 2012, I was living in Nelspruit in Mpumalanga, and I was asked to come in and evaluate a supplementary maths program being run by Uplands Outreach, which is an outreach program affiliated with Uplands College, which is an old school in White River. And Uplands Outreach had money from Rand Merchant Bank to deliver Saturday morning programs to top learners in the Nsakazi circuit, which was the worst performing circuit on the grade 12 results in 2011. And so there are only 10 high schools in the Nsakazi circuit. It's wedged in a little space between the Kruger National Park, KMIA airport, and the town of White River. It's quite a rural environment. Many learners were in circumstances with no water and electricity. There are lots of socio-economic issues there. More than half the learners were classified as orphans and vulnerable children. So the top 5 learners from each of those schools came to Uplands each Saturday, and I was involved in the planning in the beginning and the discussion of how we were going to establish a baseline measure for the project. And initially, the Uplands staff were going to use a grade 9 maths test that the college had used as the baseline, and I was concerned about that and said, you know, what happens if we find that nobody can do anything? How do we know where to start? So I took on designing a diagnostic test that would actually check their maths knowledge from grade 1 to grade 9 and benchmark the levels that they were at so that we could make sure that there were no gaps and we could take them forward. So we administered the test. These were the youngsters. It was a 3-year project, so the intention was they came in grade 10, and we spent 3 years with them when they exited in grade 12, and the idea was to try and raise maths results in that circuit. So these were my baseline results on my diagnostic. So those are the learners in order from the weakest achievement to the highest. You can see the highest achievement was 48% on my test. And what's more of concern is those coloured lines, and I don't know if you can see them too well, but the green line at the top is the grade 9 level of achievement. And these learners were at the beginning of grade 10. The yellow line is grade 6 level achievement, and the red line is grade 3 level achievement. So I had, as you can see, 5 learners that were below grade 3 level, and they were the top maths learners in their school. When I present this data at conferences, people don't believe me, but this is the reality of what we have on the ground. And just an interesting aside, the diagnostic pinpoints specific issues in maths and number operations, what we were doing before, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. I had, of the 50 learners, I had 5 that could divide whole numbers. In other words, when I asked them to say, to tell me what the answer was, if you take 20 and you divide it by 4, they could not give me an answer to that. So now we had a program planned that was teaching factorizing in maths, and I mean, how can you factorize in maths if you actually don't understand what division is, that you can't divide small numbers? So we went into panic mode, quite honestly, and we turned the program around completely, and we freed up 1 hour once a week with those 50 kids. And I stepped into teaching, which I have to tell you is a job I love to do, so it was a delight for me. And I took on the role of teaching to catch the backlog up. And I knew that I had very little time, that the grade 10 learning was going to happen concurrently, and so I needed to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. And so I took an assessment as learning approach, whereby I shared all my data with the individual learners. So every learner knew what it was that they could and couldn't do. And I engaged them in significant reflective practice. They wrote journals every week, what they found easy, what they found difficult, how I set them work every day of the week, gathering feedback from them all the time. I structured my actual sessions with them so that they operated in 3 different groups, so that they were getting what they needed depending on the level that they were starting at, and they knew what that level was. So that was a big weight off my shoulders in terms of that. They knew where to start. And then I supplemented with an online maths program, Mathletics, where I could send targeted activities to particular learners who had weaknesses that others didn't have, and so we weren't going to address as a group. And I then administered the diagnostics to them 2 terms later, and we actually we were delighted to see that in such a short period of time that we had managed to make such an impact. And I actually ended up writing this project up for my Masters in Maths Ed. But as you can see, the red line shows where they started. I've got a funny way of looking at maths, which I'm going to explain to you in a moment, but I divide all of maths up into 7 conceptual threads that run through primary school to the end of junior high school. And along those 7 threads, I have conceptual landmarks that have to be mastered in order to progress in maths. And so my diagnostic focuses on those conceptual landmarks. So those are my 7 conceptual threads. This first one being numbers. And you can see where the learners started and where they finished. Not all the learners got all the way to post grade 9 level, but as a group, they managed to advance between 3 and 6 grade levels in 2 terms, with 1 hour contact time once a week, because it was targeted at where they actually needed it. I have to tell you that the whole Learners for Excellence, it was called L4E intervention, was we poured our heart and soul into it, and I do believe that actually that is the key to making a difference. And most teachers, you can hear your enthusiasm, Terry, that that's what makes the difference, is the relationship that teachers have with learners, and we did the same. We had a 96% attendance rate over the 3-year period of the project. Of our 50 kids, 27 of them were girls. We had 8 babies produced over that 3-year period. And despite that, we still had a 96% attendance rate every Saturday. And so for me, it was a life-changing experience. I could see that Nick Spall's paper that he wrote about, that I spoke of at the beginning, he calls those learning deficits insurmountable. I found out they're not insurmountable, that they can be overcome, and even more importantly, grade 10 is not too late to overcome them, because now the big focus, now that we know that there's a problem, is on foundation phase, and now we've got to fix it. But what about all those children in between? And grade 10 is actually not too late. So I've tried to distill what was the essence of this reflective design that enables such an impact to be made. I wanted to show you this as well, because what happened is 2 years later, the project, I must tell you, there's a little end part to the L4E project, which is fantastic. End of grade 12, 47 of the 50 passed maths at the end of the year. Some of our children only passed maths the year after, or even the year after that, because they lost years at school. It was the girls really who produced babies. At the end of grade 12, we had a mix-up with applications to tertiary study with the Mpumalanga College of Nursing. They were going to take a lot of the learners, and then there was a mix-up with it all, a mess-up, and those kids had to wait a year before they could access university. But we had 29 learners who got places in tertiary education around South Africa. And at the end of their first year in university, we had a 100% pass rate. And we have, and they're in 3rd year now, and they're doing, we've got a youngster doing pharmacy at Wits, medicine through Wits. We've got an engineering student in Pretoria, 2 doing law at Rhodes. They're all around the place. The most exciting thing for me, to have a little bit of a boast, we have 12 of them on ISASA bursary studying to be teachers, 8 of which are studying to be maths teachers. So for me, those are the scalps on my belt, not the number of A's I get, but the number of kids who choose to go into teaching. Anyway, I then ran the diagnostics 2 years later with 292 children in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. That was a real eye-opener, and that's why I'm putting these results up to show you, because the learners that wrote the diagnostic were all of different grades. So there were about, I think there's 17 schools that were involved, and I had some learners who were in grade 7 and some learners who were in grade 11, and they all wrote a grade 6 diagnostic, benchmarking their levels at grade 1, grade 3, and grade 6. And as you can see from the graphs, there's no significant improvement between the grade 11 performance and the grade 7 performance. Only in data handling, the grade 11 performance is significantly better, and in algebra is it significantly better. In the important one of numbers and problem solving, it's not different at all. So what that shows me is that when you have these acquired learning deficits, if you don't fix them, they block your progress. So I've been, and I've sort of summarized those findings there, so I'm going to skip over it because I tend to talk too much. So at the heart of this intervention was reflective practice. And reflective practice is not an unknown entity in the business world. It's funny that it's a comparatively new idea in the education field, whereas in the corporate training, it's a common thing. But essentially, we had some fantastic definitions of it all now, and I only have a little to add to it really, is it's that it's characterized by deep thought and reflecting on what you understand and what you don't understand. And of course, it engages someone in that actual learning process. So I actually developed the diagnostics to the point where actually they could be administered online. And I'm just going to give you a quick little view of how that works. And then I'm going to distill out of that what I think are the essential things in a school that will drive reflective practice. So what diagnostic assessment does is it gives you direction. And when you conduct diagnostic assessment and you get results, you get a blueprint of what your knowledge and understanding is and where your strengths and weaknesses are. And then you can pointedly focus on where those weaknesses are. So, sorry, that's the extent of the sales pitch. So what happens, the way it works, I have a technology partner who's actually put it online. And so learners complete the diagnostic on a computer or a tablet or on a smartphone. It takes about 3 hours to do because there's no time constraint on it. And as I said before, it's like a scan, like an audit of someone's maths understanding. So the high school version, it measures maths ability on 81 conceptual landmarks. And each of those conceptual landmarks is benchmarked at a grade 3, a grade 6, or a grade 9 level. So that not only do you know where the weakness is, you know the level to which you have to go to pick that child up and help them make understanding. What happens when we're faced with learners who don't understand the new work we're teaching, we realize that there's a backlog, we go back to the year before and we try and do a little bit of catch-up. But what the data shows us is that actually to go back 1 year is often mostly not enough. And sometimes you have to go back 6 or 7 years to actually pick learners up. So after they've all done the diagnostic, then the teacher downloads the data and feedback is provided for each subject. We have a set of maths diagnostics and a set of science diagnostics. For each learner, and then for the teacher, for the cohort or the class, so that they can design their intervention going forward. So this is not a very good picture of the overall view of it. As I said, I divide maths into 7 conceptual threads, and those are the 7 conceptual threads. And along each of those threads are these conceptual landmarks, essential concepts that you cannot progress in maths and science through high school and university and the world of work without having those in your toolkit. So each conceptual landmark is made up of concentric circles, and the innermost circle shows grade 3 level mastery of that landmark. The next circle shows grade 6 level mastery, and the outermost circle shows grade 9 level mastery. So when a learner is actually correctly answering questions at that level on that landmark in the diagnostic, it colours it green in the middle, and it colours it red where they're getting it wrong. So at a glance, you can see the extent of the red, where the red is, and to what degree the red is, in order to be able to pick it up. So this is an example of the numbers thread, And so you can see the landmarks along the thread. This is a real child's data. And so you can see the very first conceptual landmark is just counting numbers. And even this learner in grade 9 is having some difficulty counting at grade 9 level, counting in multiples, then that would be. And so part of the report is a feedback comment specific to what it is about that conceptual landmark that the learner can't do. So the teacher can use that to then direct the correct resources to the learner to fix that. What's interesting is the little red writing, I don't know if you can read it, but it picks up evidence of carelessness. So that is a factor for many learners too. So the red ones show evidence of careless mistakes. This is still the same part of the numbers report, and unfortunately it's so small you can't read it, but where there's more feedback, that's because the learner was at a lower level. So if they're at grade 9 level, it confirms that they're at that level with an explanation for what it is on that landmark they are actually doing to be recognized as being on grade 9 level. And when they're not, it tells you exactly what it is they can't do and that they're expected to do to make grade 9 level. That's still part of the same report. So there are 7 of those. That was just one conceptual thread. Very detailed feedback to be working from. For the teacher, they get a set of class or cohort reports. And the first one of those is this is also cut screenshots from the website. An overview of the class. So there were 20 learners in this class. This was a little pilot we did right at the beginning, so this is very old data I'm showing you now. Right from the weakest performance in the class to the highest, you can see my red and my orange and my green lines again. These results are a lot better than my Alpha E ones. And then there's a little summary on our 7 levels, our 7 assessment levels of where the learners are. That's just the overview, because then what we do is we look at each conceptual thread. So that first one is the numbers conceptual thread. The second one is fractions. I separate fractions and numbers because fractions is just a minefield. And then the third one is algebra, and the fourth one is geometry, the fifth one is measurement, the sixth one is data handling, and the last one is problem solving, which is a problem all of itself. And then at the bottom here, those color bars show the teacher what percentage of the class is operating on what grade level. So the numbers thread is at the top there, and that little bit of yellow shows the teacher when your mouse hovers over it, it gives you the percentage. 5% of her class are at grade, I think they're grade 3 to 5. They're not, there was no one at grade 1 to 2 level, thank goodness, but they're at grade 3 to 5 level. And the light green is at grade 6 to 8 level in terms of numbers, and the dark green is at grade 9 level. So the teacher can see right away, I don't have a problem with number 4, which is geometry. You can see it's all green. And I don't have a problem with data handling, number 6. But I have a big problem with problem solving. And the problem with numbers is also quite small. It's targeted, it's 5 learners. So, sorry, it's not even 5 learners, it's 5%. There were only 20 learners in this class. So then specific activities can be directed to that learner to actually fix that problem. And then what we do is we take each conceptual thread and do the same with each landmark. So the teacher can see at what level each child, their class as a whole, at what level they are adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, all the different conceptual landmarks in numbers. What's interesting for me as I gather more and more data is I'm starting to see regular sinkholes, areas where learners have major problems all the time, no matter what schools I'm testing in. And I'm testing in a wide range of different kinds of schools to get a full picture. So I've already seen that place value in numbers is a big problem. And because they don't understand place value, they can't do things like rounding off. Divisibility, is a big sinkhole, very big sinkhole. It spreads into multiplication as well. And so we've got very interesting data coming out of it. I actually had a meeting this morning at WITS, and we have quite a few people who are going to be drawing on our data for writing up their papers, which is going to be quite exciting. And hopefully we're going to be finding ways then to most efficiently deal with these issues. So step 4 is the design and the implementation of the teaching and learning intervention. At this point, I am focusing on the diagnostics and in teacher development to assist schools with developing their own specific interventions. The L4E experience that I had was very intensive. It's not scalable. When you talk to anybody in government, in education, they want the scalable option. For me, teaching and learning, it's a personal thing. Relationships are really important. It's hard to scale it. And so the idea is to rather try and empower teachers in schools and leaders in schools to actually be able to design and implement their own unique interventions. So what is it that makes it reflective learning? What are the important things? These are the ideas that I have collected over this period of time working on this project. First of all, I think a growth mindset, particularly in maths and science, is absolutely vital. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Carol Dweck's book on mindsets. We have a lot of people working in the system with fixed mindsets. When you hear people saying things like, that child shouldn't be doing maths, she's a 50%er, she's not going to get more than that. That's a fixed mindset. And we need to liberate ourselves from that. If I was running teacher development programs, the first workshop I would send my teachers on is a growth mindset workshop. We need to believe in our learners. And it's not a airy-fairy kind of thing, because it's well documented in the research. And Terry drew attention to it in her talk as well. A constructivist approach is accepted by most. We have to be able to connect our knowledge to our existing knowledge in order to make our own understanding of it. It's not a matter of open a lid and pour the facts in and suddenly we know it. We have to link it to our own experiences and make our own understanding of it to really learn. And Vygotsky, who also most researchers will drop his name immediately, he reinforces so long ago a growth mindset in the sense that anybody can learn anything. It's just the support that they need. And as teachers, we provide the support. That's our job. We provide the scaffolding to enable those learners to learn beyond what you would expect for their age and their grade and all of those things. But it doesn't mean they can't do it. They can with the right support. So the other important thing that I found with maths and science is the concept of big ideas. And in 2005, an American called Randall Charles, wrote a paper on the importance of the big ideas in maths. And I was influenced quite strongly by that in terms of my conceptual threads and the creation of those. So he's got 21 big ideas that run through maths. And they might seem like really basic things. I started to put some down there just so that you could get an idea of what they are. I mean, just the concept of numbers is the first most important big idea. And interesting that the base 10 system, place value, is the second one. And that is one where I'm seeing lots and lots of problems. So the implications of that are great. What's interesting is that Charles's work in 2005 spawned an entire conference of science researchers in 2006 to create their own version of the big ideas in science. I think they took on less than him. He has 21, I think they've got about 15. But, if we keep those big ideas in place, then we know what we're actually preparing learners for down the line. We tend to get overwhelmed by the detail and the necessity in the curriculum, but all of that are the building blocks to creating these big ideas. The other big influence that I've had specifically with those conceptual threads is learning trajectories. There are two scientists in the US, Clements and Sarama, who've been working mainly with the beginnings of learnings of maths, and the idea that actually this pathway of learning, that we're building on what we learned before at earlier grades, and the learning trajectory actually refers not just to the learning pathway that the learner goes on, but also the teacher's development of the resources and the plan to get them there. I've put this little picture in because my conceptual thread idea is much more like that little picture, which comes from another person who's been working in this kind of area. So we have a path to navigate, and along the way we have these conceptual landmarks that we have to hit and master in order to make our progress. And in between, we have obstacles. And those obstacles are our preconceived ideas, our misconceptions, and those are the things that can prevent us from actually making the progress we need. And we need to know what those misconceptions and obstacles are. And then I'm a huge proponent of formative assessment, and particularly assessment as learning, which is a kind of subset of formative assessment where the learner is a critical player in the whole process. It's not that I as a teacher administer a test, mark it, and deliver a mark. Actually, I explain to the learners afterwards exactly why I did everything I did. I share all my data, all my insight, all my feedback. They analyze, they reflect on why they did well here, why they didn't do well there, what they need in order to do better. Assessment as learning is what I feel strongly holds the key to lifelong learning, because what it does is it provides formative feedback. It provides feedback that allows learners to grow. And this, I'm really sorry that the quality of the pictures is not so great, but this is a little graphic that was published in The Economist at the end of last year, I think it was. There's an Australian academic called John Hattie who's done studies of other people's research studies. He's done these meta-analyses, they call them, thousands upon thousands of them, involving millions and millions of research subjects, subjects being the learners all over the world. And what he's done is he's created a rank order of what makes impact, what makes the greatest impact. And some of the things that he's found have been really interesting. For example, small class size doesn't actually really make a big impact. Streaming children into ability groups has a negative impact. And the highest impact is feedback to pupils. This is an ongoing rank order, just by the way. You might be interested to see more, but John Hattie has a website, and he's still analysing and adding to it, and so his little rank order shifts a bit as he finds new and different data. But I just want to draw your attention to the second one. Feedback to pupils is the top one, but the second one is metacognitive strategies. And again, Terry referred to metacognition, and metacognitive activation happens when you have reflective learning. When learners are participating in their assessment process, reflecting on their strengths and their weaknesses, we metacognitively activate them. And that is such an exciting thing. Metacognition, being you're thinking about your thinking. when you start to get interested in why you learn differently to other people, why some things are difficult for you, why things are so easy and yet they're difficult for others, then you get hooked. And the ultimate goal of every teacher is to create an independent, equipped, lifelong learner. Somebody who actually finds joy in learning more. And this, I honestly believe, is at the heart of it. Metacognitive activation, coming through assessment as learning, where the learner actually is interested and actively involved in their own learning process. So just a little comment here. One of the things I found really difficult in trying to enact this process has been embracing error. I have found that very difficult. In our society, we do not embrace error. In fact, we're shamed by error. And that's a big problem because we learn by mistakes. And if we can't acknowledge our mistakes and unpack them, we're destined to keep making them. So in the classroom, it's absolutely vital for learners to be made to feel comfortable with getting the wrong answer and sharing the wrong answer and having everybody discuss why it's the wrong answer and how they could have got the right answer. We have to actively work against the shaming that happens through not getting things right. And I say to my learners, I'm actually not interested in what you've got right. I have nothing to contribute to your learning process by seeing what you've got right. But when I see what you've got wrong, that's when I can actually help you. And that was one of the barriers I faced in the Alpha E program. The kids wanted to impress me. They wanted me to be pleased with them. They thought that I would be cross with them if they got things wrong. And they would hide their mistakes, copy from other people if they didn't know what was going on. And I had to explain to them that I was collecting feedback from their work all the time. And if they copied somebody else's work, I would design my intervention for them with that other person in mind. And they wouldn't be getting what they actually needed from me. And that by showing me their mistakes, they were actually opening themselves up to huge opportunity to learn. So I believe strongly that reflective learning can identify persistent learning deficits acquired from early grades for targeted remedial attention. This, by the way, is a photograph of a grade 1 classroom in an Mpumalanga school. There are 67 learners in that class. And I love that photograph because look at their faces. We owe it to them. There's such expectation in those little faces. We owe it to them to make sure that we all acquire learning deficits. Don't get me wrong, it is a natural thing. When a teacher teaches something, every child in the class comes away with a different version of that because we have existing knowledge that we link it to, and we make our own perspective. If we have assessment as learning ongoing, we're aware of that all the time as a teacher, and we can modify it and adjust it to enable them to make an understanding that is correct and useful for them. The main really driving force for me is access to maths and science. So if incoming grade 8s at high school do a diagnostic, you can see exactly where there's the weaknesses are, the level to which they are. Those learners have got 2 years to pick those weaknesses up so that they can be ready to do maths in grade 10. And obviously to improve achievements in maths and science, to open doors to tertiary studies in maths and science, which our country so desperately needs. And for me, the ultimate is to activate those metacognitive skills so that you ignite a love of learning, so that beyond school, that person always takes pleasure in learning and understanding more. Thank you very much.